Yokai Watch was developed by the Japanese company known as Level 5. They became popular by developing beloved titles like the Professor Layton series and Ni no Kuni. Yokai Watch was originally planned to release on the PlayStation 3, and early gameplay was shown off in 2011. I'm not exactly sure why, but at some point in development, Level 5 decided to scrap the PS3 version entirely and make the game exclusive for the Nintendo 3DS. It went on to release in 2013 in Japan and became an instant hit. However, in the West, we didn't see the game until 2015, which was a smart move by Nintendo because we didn't have a major Pokemon release that year. I'm going to try my best to refrain from comparing this game to the Pokemon franchise. When this game originally released, I remember hearing all over the internet that it was a Pokemon ripoff, but then again, those same people complained that the battle system was too weird and that it was an odd game. I've said this before, but I actually like to compare this game to Earthbound more than anything. When Earthbound released, it was hard to market because of how different the game was. Back then, RPGs were mostly made around a medieval fantasy setting, and sometimes you'd get a sci-fi setting. There wasn't really a market yet for an RPG set in modern times. This caused Earthbound not to sell super well, but as the years went on, it developed a cult following and the general gaming community started to realize how great the game was. I bring this up because the marketing push for Yokai in the West was kinda weird. Just like Earthbound, Yokai Watch is a very different kind of RPG. And yes, you battle and tame creatures, but what people don't realize a lot of the time is that Pokemon wasn't even the first game to do this. Shin Megami Tensei was way ahead of this trend, but anyway. I think Yokai Watch was hard to market in the West because most people over here don't know what a yokai is. To us, they just seem like monsters or cute creatures, and they are in the game, but most of them are based on Japanese folklore that go back hundreds of years. All this to say, I'm sad these games didn't perform all that well in the West because they truly are some of the best RPGs on the 3DS in my opinion, and they do a lot of things better than the other games in the genre. With all that said, I'm going to start a new save file and get into what makes this game so great and why I love it. The game starts out with a shot panning down from the sky showing off the city of Springdale. This is one of the best looking 3DS games and you'll hear me mention it a lot. I mean, just look at these opening graphics. I couldn't believe what I was seeing the first time I started this game. Our main character is in the park talking with his friends, Eddie, Bear, and Katie. Eddie and Bear are bragging to us about the bugs they caught for their summer project, which leads us to want to catch rare bugs too so we don't fall behind. We run home and grab our net so we can embark on an epic bug catching quest. This game does something I really like, and it's not a popular trope in the genre. It's a story about a regular kid having fun on summer vacation. It's very slice of life, and something about that is so relaxing. This whole game is. There isn't some evil entity out to destroy the world, and the yokai are nowhere to be seen. They aren't even normal in this world, and people don't even know they're around. Instead, we start out small, just a kid having fun and catching some bugs. I've heard that this is a popular pastime for kids in Japan, but even so, it reminds me of the summers I spent as a kid, just riding my bike around town or finding a creek and building forts in the woods. Anyway, now that we have our net, we can head back to the park. To catch bugs in Yokai Watch, you have to interact with a tree or a patch of grass and it sends you into a first-person mode, in which you play a spin-the-wheel style minigame. I remember this being one of the things that got a lot of hate, as some people thought this mechanic was annoying, but I don't think it's that bad. Plus, you get items to fill the empty slots, giving you a higher success rate. By the way, anytime you go into one of these first-person modes, the graphics look stunning. Look at these trees. Again, I can't believe a 3DS game can look this good. We still don't have any rare bugs, since in the park we only found a few cicadas, so our main character gets the idea to go to the school and ask the janitor for advice since he has a bug collection himself. He tells us to head to Mount Wildwood where there's surely more rare bugs to be found. He gives us black syrup, which makes catching bugs a little easier and sends us on our way. Mount Wildwood is a location in the game that we'll visit often, but I want to talk about how nice it looks. I love the path leading up the mountain. Both sides of the trail are covered with thick forest and bamboo. I think when this game was localized, they tried to make it seem like this was an American town to appeal to the West, but clearly it's inspired by Japan, which I think is better. I've never been to Japan, but from the pictures I see online, the country looks beautiful, especially in more rural areas. A lot of this game's locations remind me of that, which I like a lot. After spending some time searching for rare bugs, we come up empty-handed, when a gate mysteriously disappears right before our eyes. We venture deeper into the woods hoping to find rare bugs when a cutscene starts. Sometimes Yokai Watch has fully voice-acted cutscenes. This may be controversial, but I'm not really a fan of these. The visuals, as always, look wonderful, but the voice acting is a little over the top. It's not bad, but I think I'd prefer to just read the dialogue. Anyway, this is where we first meet Whisper, our yokai companion. He tells us he's been trapped for 190 years, and since we were the ones to release him, he wants to show us more hidden yokai throughout the city. He gives us the Yokai Watch, which allows us to see a hidden yokai hidden in the tree. After we interact with it, it's upset that we woke it from its nap, so it attacks. It turns out that one of the cicadas we caught in the park earlier was actually a yokai. The battle system in this game is controversial. I don't want to talk about it in full until we're past the tutorial so I can cover everything at once, but just know that I'm a fan. After we beat the yokai, we befriend it and get its medal. Shortly after, we head home and walk in on our parents intensely arguing. This is another thing I love about this game. It has a silly and lighthearted tone and it tries to be funny, but it's not at all afraid to tackle real subject matter. Either way, we find that a hidden yokai is what's causing our parents to argue. Once we reveal it, we realize that she's been inspiriting them and causing them to fight. This is a big part of Yokai Watch. Almost every problem you might have in modern life is caused by these yokai. If you're chronically late, it's probably a yokai. If you can't sleep, yokai. If you're constantly hungry, well, you get the point. Caden tries to throw himself at the yokai and gets one shot, so Whisper suggests that we explore the city a little bit and befriend more yokai so we can take her down. As you explore the town, you can find yokai all over the place. In the grass, under cars, under patios, everywhere. There's also chests all around town that hold all sorts of items that are useful. I like trying to collect all these during a playthrough, but it can be tough to do since there's so many scattered around. Anyway, after a while, we're able to befriend 3 more yokai, which brings our total to 5. Whisper suggests that even though the yokai we have are good, we should search out a really strong one, which leads us to the fish market where we find Jibanyan. This is basically the main mascot of the franchise, and many variants have been added to the series throughout the years. When we meet him, a cutscene plays showing him try to beat up a truck as it passes through an intersection. We talk to him and he tells us that he used to be a regular cat but died after being hit by a truck. The game shows us a picture of this, which is insane and adds to my point about this game not being afraid to go there. He tells us that he's trying to find his owner and he only has a picture of her but it got stolen. This leads us to track down the picture in a back alley, which is a dungeon segment of the game. Dungeons and yokai are pretty cool, as instead of yokais being hidden, they're hostile and roam around the overworld. After tracking down the picture, we give it back to Jibanyan and he befriends us. Whisper tells us we should be ready to fight the yokai who's inspiriting our parents now, so we head back home to talk to her. While we're battling Dismarelda, we can finally talk about the battle system. It's unlike any RPG I've ever played. So basically, we have a team of 6 yokai, but you always have 3 on the field at any given time. You can use the wheel below to spin it and swap your team composition on the fly. The yokai perform their standard attacks automatically in real time, so you don't have to do anything, but the strategy comes into play when it comes down to timing. Timing your soultimate moves, timing your items, when to swap the party composition. It sounds simple in the way I'm describing it, but the battles in yokai are way more involved and exciting than they look. I've never been bored during a battle, especially not during the boss fights, but we'll talk about those later. After defeating Dismarelda, she offers us her medal and we befriend her, and our parents stop fighting. This section of the game was basically the tutorial, but I really like it, and it sets us up well for what we'll be doing for the rest of the adventure. The next day, we wake up and tell Whisper we're supposed to meet up with Katie in Triangle Park, so that's where we'll head next. Now that the tutorial is out of the way, the game allows us to do side quests and favors. These normally grant the player items, plus experience points for completing them. They're mostly simple tasks, but I'm glad they're here. I'll never complain about getting extra side content, plus gaining experience is always a good feeling. Once we meet Katie at the park, she tells us that she needs to go apologize to her friend because they got into a big fight. Whisper suspects that this is the doing of a yokai, so we head down to the riverfront and see if we can help the situation. Sure enough, a yokai was in the area, inspiriting people and making them say things they didn't mean. We find Tattletale and befriend her, and she tells us that the creepy businessmen are hanging around town and they were talking about broken seals. Whisper thinks this is odd and tells us we should investigate. Upon looking into this, we find a businessman by the post office, but it turned out to be a yokai disguised as a human. Once defeated, he says that we'll never be able to defeat them all, and Whisper tells us if we don't do something about the seals, that the yokai world and the human world will collide, leading to terrible chaos. So now we're tasked with finding the others and making sure this doesn't happen. The first seal is outside the bank, and after a quick battle, we're able to fix it. The next one is by the community center, which, same as last time, involved a quick battle and then it was fixed. Next, however, we need to go to the elementary school where the source of the problem began. We find the last seal, but this one seems to be radiating more power than the others. As we try to investigate it, a giant yokai spawns out of nowhere, and before we know it, we're battling our first boss fight. This fight is really what got me hooked on the game when I played it for the first time 10 years ago. It was an excellent display of what the Yokai Watch battle system could be. I love that you have to target the specific eyes when they're open and strategically put your yokai in the back to heal them from being inspirited. This is when the game shines the most, and it really only gets better from here. Once we defeat Amander, he tries to shoot fire out of his mouth to hit us, but right before it does, a mysterious yokai shows up and creates a force field protecting us. It then swiftly disappears, but we're able to fix the last seal. The next day, Whisper says that even though we fixed the seals around town, there's still something more at play and we should look into getting our watch upgraded at Timers and More. This will allow us to see more powerful yokai. The game works on a grading system. Basically, the higher the grade, the harder the yokai is to find. I haven't really mentioned this yet, but Yokai Watch is kind of an open world game. Well, more like open zone. Springdale is split up into 5 different parts of town, but once you have access to that area, it's all free roam from there. Sometimes there are special doors that block you from being able to go to certain locations until you have a more upgraded watch, but this is still really cool, especially for it being on the 3DS. The part of town we've been exploring up to this point is Uptown Springdale. I like this area quite a bit. It feels quaint but bustling at the same time. It kinda reminds me of the town I grew up in, although Springdale is much nicer. Anyway, to get to Timers and More, we have to go to Blossom Heights, which is just a quick walk heading east. Blossom Heights is a much more rustic part of town. Life seems to move a little slower here and it's a little more laid back. The buildings look older and the architecture is more classical Japanese as opposed to modern like the rest of the game. Blossom Heights has a lot of areas to explore, but we'll get to that a little later. Once we get to Timers and More, the shopkeeper reveals to us that he himself is actually a yokai, which is interesting. Whisper tells us that some yokai take human form and join society that way, which is odd and kinda threw me off the first time I played this, but it's a cool concept and I kinda like it. He tells us that in order to upgrade the watch, we need to get a cog, a screw, and a spring. First we pick up the screw from the bike shop, then we head towards the center of town and meet the landlord of a complex who gives us the spring. It's a little sad because he tells us about a feature where yokai from other cities can visit here through Street Pass. I can't tell you enough how much I love Street Pass, and while this is technically still possible, there's almost no chance that these days you'll ever get a yokai to visit your town. It's a really great idea, but sadly this is one of those features that's been mostly lost to time. Finally, to get the cog, we have to explore the old mansion. You get to explore the main level and even the old attic. This is the game's first real dungeon, and I have to say, I love when RPGs with modern settings do this. They turn things that you'd see in real life into a classic RPG dungeon. It's such a cool idea to me. We'll see a lot more dungeons like this in the game, but I wanted to point this out. After exploring for a while, we find the key to the main entrance and find a sleeping yokai who is suffering from nightmares. As we woke it up, it got startled and attacked us. After a quick battle, we befriend it and it gives us the cog that we finally need to upgrade the watch. Back at Timers and More, the shopkeeper tells us he can't finish the watch until we retrieve his underwear that he lost at the bathhouse. No, I'm not kidding. You see, this is what I mean when I say the game reminds me of Earthbound. It's just such a far out quest that you never thought you'd be playing in your life, yet here we are. On our way to the bathhouse, we enter a mode called Terror Time. This happens from time to time when you're exploring the city at night. Basically, a giant red yokai will chase you down and you have to try to avoid him while looking for the door to try to escape. If you're brave, you can try to hunt down the special red chests that pop up around the city in this mode, but most of the time I just head for the door and be on my way. I think Terror Time is cool, but it kinda gets old after a while. Thankfully it doesn't happen often enough to become a major complaint. Anyway, we can finally head to the bathhouse and what do you know? We have to fight a giant pig who's wearing the old man's underwear just to get them back. This boss fight is insane. Just look at the old men dancing in the back. This game is wild and I love every bit of it. This boss fight isn't as cool as facing Amander, but I still love it for what it is. And by the way, the boss fights in Yokai Watch are no joke. Seriously, I had to use all the XP items I had just to stand a chance against him. I haven't mentioned this yet, but on Mount Wildwood, you can use coins to get unique yokai or items at the Crankakai. I happened to get a few very rare experience boosting items which I used on Jibanyan and Kaden, and I still almost lost the fight. Anyway, with that we head back to Timers and More and finally get the rank D watch, which allows us to befriend more powerful yokai. Once this chapter is over, we're shown a cutscene of Bear's dad yelling at him because he lost their wedding ring in Catfish Pond. Later, Bear meets up with us and tells us about this before walking off. Our character and Whisper decide that we're going to help Bear out, but first, we're going to go to the riverbank and try to find a yokai that's good at swimming. Down at the riverbank, we meet Wakapa. This is a yokai with passive-aggressive tendencies. He tells us that he'll help us with whatever we need, but first, we have to catch 3 carp for him. He gives us the fishing rod, and shortly after, we catch the fish we need to befriend him. This is one of my favorite yokai. I'll be the first to admit that I have no idea how to build a competitive team in this game, and I'm okay with that. But this guy seems good, and I've always carried him to the end of the game. The fishing minigame in Yokai Watch is identical to the bug catching, but instead of using black syrup, you can use fish bait. I love when games like this have a fishing minigame. At one point, I almost caught every fish in Yokai, but never ended up getting around to it. I like fishing in real life, but it's hard to beat those background views in this game. Once we get to Catfish Pond, Wakapa finds the ring that Bear lost, but before we get it back, we have to fight the king of Catfish Pond. This boss fight is pretty cool, and I like how he's designed to look like an old pirate ship. Sometimes he summons his fish buddies to help him out, but this fight wasn't too bad, especially since I've stocked up on some healing items this time around. After we beat the boss, we return the ring to Bear, who's scared to take it to his parents alone, so we offer to join him at his house, which is where we're heading next. It turns out the whole ring situation was a big misunderstanding, and we end this chapter on a happy note. Next, we're shown a cutscene of our dad heading out for work, but he's being followed by a yokai. He ends up getting inspirited by it and forgetting his papers at the train station before an important meeting at work. So our mom asks us to grab the papers and bring them downtown to our dad's office. Once we get the papers, we take the train to downtown Springdale. This area is a bustling metropolis with skyscrapers and malls. There's a few side quests around here, but we don't have time to explore as we only have 3 minutes to get to our dad's office. We have to rush over while trying to avoid the yokai in the overworld. This isn't a hard section really, but I like how they tried to make an action scene like this. A lot of RPGs like this don't really attempt anything like it, so I thought it was kinda cool. Finally, we hand Dad his papers and his meeting goes off without a hitch thanks to us. Before heading home, Whisper wants us to track down the Wazits and defeat them so they never become a problem again. It turns out this yokai was just bored and wanted a friend, so it hands us its medal and we befriend it. Once we get home, Dad gives us a bike as his way of saying thank you, and we're told to ride it to Flower Road to test drive it. Before heading to Flower Road, I want to stop at Timers and More and get our next watch upgrade. The shopkeeper tells us that he already has the parts but needs to know if we're strong enough to handle the more tough yokai, so he sends us downtown to defeat 3 yokai in specific locations. The first yokai is located at the Academy shortcut and doesn't put up much of a fight. The second location is behind Frostia's place. This is a restaurant that's only open at night, but for the sake of defeating the yokai, we just have to sneak through the back alley, and again, it wasn't a tough fight. The third and final yokai is behind the delivery bay. I can't explain why, but I can't stop thinking about how much I love these locations. I think in order to have an RPG set in a contemporary setting, you have to do it right for it to not be boring, and this game does it right. I love the idea of being in a downtown city and having to fight all these yokai in back alleys or sewers or wherever. With that being done, we can head back to Mr. Goodsight and get our watch upgraded to C rank. Before we continue the main story, there's a few locations I want to talk about. In Blossom Heights, you can go to Shoten Temple. If you complete a simple side quest for Mr. Zen, he allows us to access the fusion feature in Yokai Watch. This is really cool as you can fuse yokai with other yokai or sometimes even yokai with items. Some yokai evolve through level, but this gives you a lot of possibilities when it comes to team building, and I wanted to at least mention it. The next place is something I either forgot about or didn't know about entirely. If we head back to Uptown Springdale, we can find a facility called the Jungle Hunter. This is where you can trade in your bugs and fish that you've collected in exchange for rare items. I've always loved that you could catch bugs and fish in Yokai Watch because it's a relaxing thing to do and it reminds me of Animal Crossing. But discovering this place makes it even better. If you really grind out your collection, you can get some amazing items here. With all that out of the way, we can finally head over to Flower Road. Once we get here, the camera angle changes and it looks nice. You can see the town in the background with the clouds moving in the sky. The amount of effort that Level 5 put into this game is honestly impressive. Anyway, now that we're here, we're going to check out the bookstore. Upon entering, we see a confrontation between the owner and a businessman. After we talk to him, he tells us that they want to buy the property so they can turn Flower Road into a generic mall. Then he tells us something about hearing weird things ever since the mall talk started. We find out that our science teacher is nearby, so we go to him for answers. Our science teacher basically confirmed what we already knew, that something strange is happening in this area, and tells us that we should talk to Lucas, who was at the scene when a mysterious fire started. Once we talk to Lucas, he tells us that the fire started near the abandoned hospital, seemingly out of nowhere, so we go to investigate. When we do, we find the yokai who seems to be responsible for all the commotion on Flower Road. He tells us he'll deal with us once we meet him at the construction site after nightfall, so that's where we're gonna head. When we get to the construction site, we meet Koma-san, who's trying to meet Kyubi, the very same who challenged us to come here at night. We add him to the team and enter the site. The construction site is another really great dungeon. I love that you get to explore a skyscraper before it's finished, and just another one of those places in the game I think is really cool. As we explore higher up the construction site, we catch glimpses of a hulking creature staring at us from outside. It looks super creepy, but it's also pretty funny. Eventually, we get to the top where it turns out Kyubi wasn't bad after all. Instead, he lured us to the construction site so we could take down the monstrosity that was the real culprit behind the weird happenings. This boss fight was jaw-dropping the first time I saw it. Just look at how huge this guy is. I've always loved the background of this battle too. Just compare the size of this guy with the skyscrapers in the background. If you target his eyes, he's not too tough of a fight surprisingly, so we beat him without much trouble. Afterwards, Kyubi tells us there's more to learn about what's going on and then vanishes. The next day, we're supposed to head to Eddie's house and hang out, but first we're going to head to Timers and More and get yet another watch upgrade. This requires us to do the same thing as last time, hunt down 3 yokai and defeat them. Since you've already seen this song and dance before, I'm just going to show us getting the next watch upgrade. With that out of the way, it's finally time to head to Eddie's house. He lives in Breezy Hills, and this is basically the rich neighborhood of Springdale. The interior locations look fantastic in this game, but once we get to Eddie's house, you can really tell how much personality they put into these places. For some reason, his house had a B-ranked locked door on it, but either way, now that we're here, it's time to go hang out with Eddie. Eddie suggests that we head to the museum and hang out since he has free passes to the exhibits, so after admiring this cool comic strip on his desk, we make our way over to the museum. Once we meet Eddie, we explore the museum and check out the exhibits together. I love museums in real life, specifically science and history. Something about walking around and seeing all the immersive exhibits is very interesting to me, so it's cool to explore something similar in Yokai Watch. Once we're done, Eddie tells us about a rumor of a set of armor walking around on its own at night, so we agree to come back after sundown and see what's going on. Once we meet back with Eddie, we discover a yokai called Mirapo who allows us to teleport. We use it to get inside the museum where things look much different. Now, yokai are wandering around the floor and there's lasers all over the place. This is another dungeon in the game that I love. Not only is it a museum, which is cool to begin with, but we have to use the Mirapo to get around the place and avoid the lasers. I could go on and on about how much I like this place, but I think you get the idea. While Eddie is working on the security system, we're supposed to look for a key so we can gain access to the hidden room that supposedly holds this weird animated armor. After reaching the second floor, we manage to find the key and bring it back to Eddie, who is fully able to disable the security system, allowing us into the locked room. It's here we find the infamous armor, who starts to shake and come to life. As you would expect, this is yet another boss fight, and it's one of my favorites in the game. Fantasmarai has insane damage output, but if you target his swords, they'll eventually break. This is crucial because without doing this, you might be in trouble. After breaking his swords, you want to target his chest. You'll notice that you don't actually inflict any damage on him until his chest breaks, revealing a mouse is in the armor. At this stage, you can finally deal loads of damage to him, and eventually, we take him down. Eddie sees the mouse flee and assumes that the whole thing was caused by it, not knowing that this town is infested with yokai. I haven't brought this up yet, but the game basically plays out like a TV show, sort of a Monster of the Week style thing. Each chapter has a self-contained story and an end boss. I really like this structure because you can take long breaks from the game and come back like you're ready to play through a new episode of a TV show or something. There is hints to an overarching story, but the game doesn't take itself too serious, which I think is a good thing. It's such a ridiculous concept that I think if it did, people might not be able to buy into it. Thankfully, I think the game nails a perfect balance. After this chapter is over, the next one begins with a cutscene of us hanging out with all of our friends at the festival. Soon, they start to talk about scary rumors that take place in the school, but we want to go to the rooftop to watch fireworks, so we figure why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Once we get to the school, we sneak through a side entrance and find a set of keys that unlock all the doors within. The school is another dungeon I've always liked. It's cool to see that after hours, yokai roam the halls and basically haunt the place. It turns out that a mischievous yokai has inspirited our friends and have them hidden around the school. They're in a trance and we get to be the ones that break them out of it. Once we get to the second floor, the first of our friends we find is Bear. A yokai is holding him captive till we find a rib bone from a skeleton that he took to his homeroom. Once we retrieve the rib bone, we give it to Ratel, and Bear breaks out of his trance and heads to the roof where we're all supposed to meet later. Next, we find Eddie in the auditorium, who is literally entranced by a yokai's piano playing. Q-Pistol tells us that it wants sheet music so it can play better without Eddie mocking the music, so we're sent to the library to find it. Once we return with the sheet music, the yokai can finally play well and Eddie heads to the roof. Lastly, it's time to look for Katie. As we enter the room where Katie is in, a giant spider-like yokai drops down from the ceiling and attacks us. I really like this boss fight. You have to target its legs as it's hanging from the ceiling, and when you finally get it to fall down, you can attack its belly and deal serious damage. This boss fight has always reminded me of the first boss from Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, which is a high compliment. Once we defeat it, Katie snaps out of her trance and agrees to meet up with the rest of us on the roof, where we gather with our friends and watch fireworks from the festival together. The next day, Whisper wakes us up and tells us he has a bad feeling about all the ominous happenings around town and that we should investigate further. Before we investigate, it's time to get yet another watch upgrade at Timers and More, which is the same process as the last two upgrades. So with that out of the way, we finally have our watch at A rank. Next, we're supposed to head back to the school and find a teacher so we can ask about strange happenings around town. Our science teacher tells us that we should check out Shoten Temple if we're curious about the supernatural. Apparently, there's some kind of mystical, all-seeing crystal there, so that's where we're heading next. At Shoten Temple, it turns out that the crystal ball is actually part of a yokai, but in order for him to let us use it, we need to bring him a sawtooth stag. This is a type of beetle that resides on Mount Wildwood, so we need to go there and find this bug. The stag is much easier to find at night, so we wait till sunsets and eventually find it near Catfish Pond. Once we bring it back to him, the yokai shows us that the Nocturn Hospital is where we should head next. This is where we first met Kyubi, but we couldn't pass because of an A-rank door, which is now not a problem. In Nocturn Hospital, we go room to room letting the yokai examine us, which is pretty creepy, but just like the other dungeons, I love this location and I think it's cool that they try to mix up the formula a little bit here and there. Each dungeon has a slightly different structure in terms of our goals. In the school, we were searching for our friends, and here, even though we have a bad feeling about it, we have to follow the yokai's orders to get our examinations done. After a while, we meet the supposed director of the hospital, which is immediately off-putting because his place has been abandoned for years. He tells us to meet him in the surgery room so we can have a change of heart, but I think you all know what that means. Once we're in the surgery room, the director reveals himself to be Dr. Maddiman. This boss fight is crazy. This is a kid's game with a mostly lighthearted tone, and this boss is literally trying to cut our heart out of our body. I've mentioned it already, but I love the fact that this game gets dark like this sometimes. Anyway, this boss fight is pretty standard, although there's little hearts that pop up in the background that you want to target and pop, or else the boss will keep healing. This fight was kinda tough, but like I've said before, I don't exactly know how to build a competitive team. After the fight, Draggy shows us a huge yokai that starts talking about taking over the human world. The next day, Lucas shows up at our house and reveals to us that he too can see yokai, and he's been having strange dreams about this. He wants us to meet him at the sacred tree at Mount Wildwood and see if we can enter the yokai world from there. This chapter is called Farewell Yokai. Believe it or not, this is already the final chapter of the game. Once we reach Mount Wildwood, we discover that the big tree where we first met Whisper is actually an elevator that leads to the yokai world. This place looks very different to what we've seen up to this point. I've given the game a lot of praise for taking place in a modern city with fun locations that remind you of real life, but this place fully embraces the weird, which I think is a good thing. Not that Springdale was getting stale, but getting to explore the yokai world signifies that we're about to do something big. The main entrance is called the World's Edge, and it looks different to anything we've seen up to this point. The street is lined with cherry blossom trees, and the sky is an eerie green. Not to mention the temple with 3 blinking eyes that stare at you while you're walking around. This place looks fantastic, and again, it's another example of how Level 5 really took things to the next level. The crazy thing is, when you compare this game to its sequels, it seems so bare bones, but on its own, it's still so packed with content and things to do. That's a discussion for another day, but it's a compliment to both this game and the future releases in the series. Anyway, once we pass through the gate, a yokai named Venoct attacks us. This is the same yokai that saved us against Amander earlier in the story. Once we defeat him, he befriends us and reveals that Lucas is actually the son of the evil McCracken yokai, and he aims to take over the human world, and it's our job to stop him. After finding out about this, we try to delve deeper into the yokai world, but we're stopped by Gargaros, who says we haven't completed enough quests to pass. This isn't really a big deal though. Basically, if you've completed 21 or more side quests, this guy will just let you pass, but for the sake of the video, I've been going through the story pretty quickly. I normally do every side quest that I can when I'm playing in my free time, so this normally isn't an issue. He sends us down to Hungry Pass, which is kinda like a dungeon made out of cake. As much as I love the realistic locations in the rest of the game, it's also very cool to explore a place made out of cake. I don't know why, but this place always reminds me of a Pikmin level. I'm not sure if anything like this was ever in a Pikmin game, but I could see it. Anyway, after a quick game of hide and seek with a yokai, we're let out of the cake dungeon and we can continue onward. The second gateway requires us to be honest. He tells us kids are not allowed to pass and asks us if we're a child. Since we answer honestly, he lets us pass without any problems. The third gate requires us to have fought over 130 battles for us to pass. Luckily, we fought over 170, so we get through without any fuss. It's at this point we finally confront McCracken. He reveals to us what we had already suspected, that he wanted to take over the human world and reign supreme over everyone. A battle ensues, but surprisingly it goes pretty smooth, all things considered. You can target his hands and his hat to make the fight easier, but even though this battle is over, we're not done yet. Next we need to head back to the school and meet back up with Lucas. Shortly after, a much stronger slime Amander returns and we defeat him once again, although it took much longer this time. After taking him down, we're told we need to fix 3 seals once again, but this time, it'll be permanent. After a few quick battles, we fix the seals and all the trees in Springdale turn into cherry blossoms. Finally, we head back to Mount Wildwood where McCracken is waiting for us. He transforms into a monstrosity. This is a great boss fight. It's cool seeing the background of Mount Wildwood turn ash white and just how crazy he looks while battling is awesome. This fight was intense all the way through and it exemplifies why I love the battle system so much. There isn't a moment to waste between healing, dealing damage, and purifying your yokai. Once the fight is over, we successfully end McCracken's terror. However, in order to ensure no future harm comes to the human world, Whisper seals off the elevator to the yokai world, which means all yokai have to go back. This is an insanely sad ending, and yet, as we look over the city as the cherry blossoms blow in the wind, you can't help but to feel happy at the same time. This scene is one of the best looking shots on the 3DS, and I can't say enough about how good the game looks visually. As the credits roll, we see images of the artwork for the game, and I don't know how they did it, but the artwork captures the tone of the game perfectly. It's so charming and heartwarming, and a little bittersweet seeing it as the credits roll. Yokai Watch is a bit of a childish game, but that's not at all to its fault. It's a misunderstood gem that deserved a lot more attention than what it got. Sure, you had people all over the internet calling it a Pokemon ripoff, but those of you who have actually played the game know that this is far from the truth. It's a game with so much content packed into it. I didn't do a lot of the extra content while making this video, but if I've convinced you to try it, or if you're going to replay it again, I highly recommend taking your time. Catch some bugs, sit back and collect the fish, discover yokai in places you wouldn't normally look, talk to the NPCs, do the side quests. I love this game even more today than I could have ever imagined. I was worried going into this that I was nostalgia blind and the game was just gonna be okay. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Level 5 did an amazing job here, and they continued to improve with future entries. Yokai Watch as a series seems to be dead, but recently Level 5 announced some kind of spiritual successor called Holy Horror Mansion. If that game turns out to be any good, I just hope that it gets the love and the praise that Yokai Watch deserved the first time around. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.